There is a quiet kind of control that almost nobody talks about. It doesn't look like shouting or threats or open cruelty. It looks like a raised eyebrow that makes you doubt yourself. A small joke that cuts a little too deep. A delayed reply that makes your chest tighten. A tone of voice that makes you feel stupid for asking a simple question. You tell yourself, I'm overthinking. I'm too sensitive. But deep down you feel it. Something is steering you. Something is shaping your decisions, your reactions, your sense of worth, without ever needing to say, I own you. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling smaller and you couldn't explain why, if you've ever changed your mind just because someone made a face, if you've ever apologized for things you didn't do just to keep the peace, then this is for you. Before we go deeper, help this message find more people who need it. Like this video if it resonates. Share it with someone who is always doubting themselves. Comment your experience or insight below, and subscribe to Audiobook Vision for more deep explorations into dark psychology and the quiet science of control. Now, let's talk about what dark psychology really means in everyday life. You don't live in a lab. You live in rooms and chats and relationships where tiny signals change what you do, often without you noticing. Someone's sigh, someone's silence, someone's praise, someone's disappointment. All of these are like small hands nudging the wheel of your choices. You think you're steering, and sometimes you are, but sometimes you're moving in response to invisible pressure. The quiet science of control is not about brainwashing in some extreme movie sense. It's about subtle cues and emotional hooks that shape your behavior. It's about how people use your need to be seen, your fear of rejection, your hunger for approval, and your discomfort with conflict to gently guide you into the role they want you to play. Most of the time, they don't even call it control. They call it just being honest, just joking, just how I am. And very often, it starts with something you don't naturally connect to control at all. Insults dot it first. Insults and control sound like opposites. You imagine control as force, not words. But insults, especially small ones from people you care about, are some of the most powerful tests in the dark psychology of relationships. They are not always shouted. Sometimes they are whispered. Sometimes they are wrapped in a smile. Sometimes they are disguised as feedback, truth, or just messing with you. Think about a time when someone said something that hurt you, but then laughed and said, relax, it's just a joke. Your body didn't think it was funny. You felt that sting in your chest or your stomach. Your mind started working. Was that about me? Do they see me that way? Am I really like that? And then something strange happened. Instead of pulling away from them, you leaned in. You tried to prove you weren't what they said. You tried to be better, calmer, prettier, smarter, quieter, whatever would make that label disappear. This is the first core idea, the psychology of insults. 1. The psychology of insults is simple but brutal. An insult from someone important to you is not just information, it's a test. When someone close to you calls you too sensitive, crazy, clingy, lazy, not really my type, they are not just expressing a random opinion. They are watching what you will do with that pain. Will you argue? Will you apologize? Will you laugh at yourself to keep them comfortable? Will you try harder to be what they like? If you stay and adjust yourself, they learn something powerful. Your need to keep them happy is greater than your need to protect yourself. The insult becomes a tool. It reminds you that your place in their world is not secure. It reminds you that you must keep earning your seat. And because you don't want to lose them, you start shaping your behavior around their criticisms, not your values. You forget that they are just one human with one opinion. You start treating their words like a mirror. And every time they throw a subtle insult at you, you check your reflection in it. Am I too much? Am I not enough? Am I broken? In that moment, control has already begun. They don't have to demand anything loudly. They just plant doubt and let you do the rest. Point 2. The second idea is framing control. If insults are the tests, framing is the story those tests live inside. Whoever controls the frame controls the meaning of what happens. A person who understands dark psychology, consciously or unconsciously, uses language and attitude to define the entire situation in their favor. They might say things like, "Everyone wants me, I don't need anyone," or, "You always take things personally," "You're so dramatic," or, "You'd never leave," "You're too attached." These sentences are more than words. They are frames. They place them as the stable one, the prize, the objective observer, and place you as the emotional, insecure, lucky to be. Here one. You may protest, but once you accept the frame, you start behaving inside it. If they say, "You're too sensitive," and you accept that, then anytime you feel hurt, you doubt yourself instead of their behavior. If they say, "You're obsessed with me," and you accept the frame, then anytime you ask for clarity, it feels like proof of their story. They become the sane one, you become the problem. And once that story is installed, it becomes very easy to steer your choices. You might stop grinning, up your needs because you don't want to be dramatic. You might overgive to prove you're not selfish. You might cling even more to prove you're capable of deep love, which strangely confirms their idea of you as clingy. This is the trap of framing control. You end up playing the role you are trying to reject. 3. The third idea is how reacting disempowers you. Your reaction is emotional gold. It shows exactly where your soft spots are. When someone uses insults or frames to test you, they are watching for your reaction. Do you explode? Do you shut down? Do you over-explain? Do you chase? Each of those responses teaches them which buttons to press. Most people think power in a conflict comes from speaking the most. But in dark psychology, the one who reacts the most is often the one with less power. Because reacting quickly, intensely, and repeatedly means your inner world is being controlled from the outside. They say one word. You have a 5-hour meltdown. They delay a message. You can't eat. They seem distant. Your entire day collapses. From a control perspective, very small moves on their side equal huge movements on your side. This doesn't make you weak or foolish. It makes you human. You care. You want security. You want to fix misunderstandings. You want closeness. But if you always react immediately, without space, you give them a live map of your mind. They now know what to say if they want you to panic, to apologize, to chase, to surrender. Your reactions become levers they can pull. So what do you do instead? This is where the fourth idea comes in. Silent power. 4. Silent power is not the same as the silent treatment. The silent treatment is another weapon of control. It is used to punish, to make you anxious, to force you into chasing and apologizing. Silent power is different. Silent power is the pause you give yourself between their move and your move. It is the moment where you feel the urge to react, and you wait. When someone throws an insult at you, your body reacts instantly. You feel heat, tension, a rush of thoughts. Silent power doesn't tell you to ignore that. It tells you, don't let that be the thing that writes your reply. For a few seconds, or a few minutes, or longer, you let your nervous system settle before you act. Silence gives you questions. What did they just say? Why did they say it now? Are they in pain and projecting? Are they testing me? Does this comment deserve a response at all? Do I want to have this conversation right now? Or am I only answering because I'm afraid to lose them? When you respond from silence instead of from pure emotion, you change the entire interaction. Instead of sending 10 messages in a panic, you might send one clear sentence. Instead of screaming back, you might say, "I don't accept being spoken to like that." Instead of chasing when they withdraw, you might simply carry on with your day and see what they do when you are no longer the one doing all the emotional labor, not to someone using dark psychology against you. Your silence is very uncomfortable. They are used to you jumping, explaining, justifying, begging. When you no longer do that, their control weakens. They can still talk. They can still insult. But the chain between their behavior and your reaction is no longer automatic. You have inserted yourself into that space. That space is your power. 5. The fifth idea is self-awareness as immunity. You can't control who tries to use dark psychology on you, but you can control how much of you they can actually reach. Self-awareness is like a shield that doesn't stop the arrow from being shot, but can stop it from sinking as deep. To be self-aware here means you know your own sore spots. You know which words slice you faster. Maybe being called too much hurts you because you've always felt like a burden. Maybe being told you'd be nothing without me hits you because you secretly fear you are not enough on your own. Maybe being called overly emotional stings because your feelings were always dismissed growing up. When you don't know these wounds, any insult that hits them feels like pure truth. If it hurts this much, it must be real, you tell yourself. But when you do know them, you can separate the pain from the meaning. You can say, "This hurts more because it touches an old bruise." The pain is real, but their words are not automatically reality. Self-awareness lets you notice your patterns too. You can start saying things like, "I tend to over-explain when I feel accused. I tend to chase when someone pulls away. I tend to accept blame just to end conflict." These behaviors don't make you bad. They make you a person who adapted to past situations. But if you see them clearly, you can choose differently. If you know you over-explain, you can practice shorter replies. If you know you chase, you can practice staying still when you want to run after someone. If you know you self-blame, you can practice saying, "What if I'm not the only one responsible here?" This self-awareness doesn't guarantee that nobody can ever control you again, but it makes controlling you much harder. 6. The sixth idea is learning from insults. In a dark control dynamic, insults are always supposed to either crush you or make you cling. They are not meant to educate you. They are meant to destabilize you, but you can flip that. You can decide that if someone throws a harsh word at you, you will extract whatever useful lesson might be there and discard the rest. If someone says, "You never listen," you can check. Is there a pattern where you interrupt or defend instead of listening? If yes, you can grow. If no, you let the insult go as projection. If someone says, "You're too dependent," you can ask, "Am I relying on this one person for all my emotional needs?" If yes, you can diversify your support. If no, then their comment says more about their fear of intimacy than about you. The important thing is that you are the one who decides which part of an insult has value. You are no longer a sponge absorbing everything. You are a filter. The insult becomes raw data. You are the scientist. You run it through your own understanding, your values, your experiences. If it helps you become a healthier version of yourself, you use it. If it only exists to bring you down and increase their control, you drop it. This attitude terrifies controllers because they depend on you granting their words absolute authority. Once you stop doing that, their grip loosens. They can still speak, but you have regained the right to interpret. 7. The seventh idea is gentle responses. Many people believe that to fight dark psychology, you must become dark yourself, sharp, ruthless, icy. But if you go to extremes, you risk becoming the same kind of person who hurt you. You start using silence as punishment, teasing as control, insults as tests. You become the one in power, but you lose your softness, your warmth, your humanity. Gentle responses are a different path. They allow you to maintain your integrity while still protecting yourself. Gentle does not mean weak. It means you choose your words with intention instead of from panic. When someone uses a cutting joke, you don't have to laugh or explode. You can say, "That joke feels like an insult. I don't enjoy that." When someone calls you too sensitive, you can say, "My sensitivity is part of me. If you can't handle that, maybe this isn't right." When someone tries to guilt you, after everything I've done for you, you can say, "If you did those things to control me, not out of care, then that is a problem." These sentences don't attack their character. They shine a light on the behavior. And that light does something important. It forces the other person to either confront what they're doing or reveal that they don't care. If they respond by listening, apologizing, adjusting, there may be potential to rebuild trust. If they respond by mocking you, twisting your words, or doubling down on the control, you have clear evidence. You no longer have to guess. Gentle responses turn hidden dynamics into visible choices. 8. The eighth idea is lasting calm and the ultimate shift in power. Lasting calm doesn't mean always feeling peaceful. It means knowing that even when your emotions spike, you have a place to stand inside yourself that is not defined by another person's mood. You build this calm by giving your life more pillars than just one relationship, one job, one opinion. You let your sense of self spread out into things you can control. What you learn, how you take care of your body, how you treat others, what you create, what you enjoy. The more stable these areas become, the less any single person can dominate your inner world. Then, slowly, something incredible happens. The people who once had immense power over you begin to feel smaller. Their insults sound less like prophecy and more like noise. Their frames feel less like reality and more like attempts. Their tests feel less like emergencies and more like invitations. You can decline. That is the ultimate shift in power. You stop living your life as a response to other people's cues. You start living it as an expression of your own values. You can still love, you can still care, you can still feel desire, but you no longer sacrifice your agency to keep someone else comfortable. You no longer take every insult as a command to change. You no longer treat every silence as a demand to perform. You have become the quiet science of control in your own life, not controlling others, but mastering yourself. As this first part closes, remember this. Dark psychology is not just out there in villains and manipulators. It's woven into everyday patterns, into jokes that aren't jokes, into labels that stick, into tests disguised as honesty. You cannot stop the world from using these tools, but you can stop them from owning you. Insults are tests, not truths. Reacting instantly often feeds their power. Silence gives you room to think. Self-awareness becomes your immunity. Learning from insults lets you grow instead of shrink. Gentle responses protect your dignity without turning you cold. Lasting calm gives you a stable ground to stand on. And the ultimate shift in power is when you finally, quietly decide, other people can influence me, but they no longer get to pilot me. For now, just hold one sentence close. I can still care, but I will not give my control away. There's a strange feeling you get once you start seeing the quiet science of control for what it really is. It's like the room you've always lived in suddenly lights up and you notice all the small strings you never saw before. You notice how a certain tone always makes you shut up. You notice how a certain silence always makes you explain yourself. You notice how a tiny insult can change your whole plan for the day. You realize this isn't random. This is a system. And for years, Your emotions have been part of that system without your consent. In the first part, you began to see the structure, how insults act as tests, how framing control defines the story you live in, how reacting gives away power, how silence, self-awareness, and gentle responses create a hidden strength, and how lasting calm moves you toward real agency. Now, in this part, you're going to walk through what that looks like in real life. Not just as ideas, but as moments. Moments where you used to lose control without even noticing, and moments where you will now have a different choice. Imagine this simple scene. You're sitting with someone close to you. Maybe it's a partner, a friend, a family member. You're telling them something that matters to you. Your voice is a little soft because you're not fully sure how they'll react. You finally get the courage out, and they look at you and say, with a half smile, "Wow, you're really dramatic about everything, aren't you?" The old you would feel a stab in the chest. Maybe you'd rush to say, "No, I'm not dramatic. I just care." Maybe you'd shut down and say, "Forget it. It's not important." Maybe you'd change the topic. Maybe you'd laugh and make fun of yourself before they can. In all those reactions, something important happens. The topic disappears, and the frame becomes, you are dramatic, they are normal. The insult passes the test. It has done its job. You feel small, and they feel large. But now, you know that insult is not just a random comment. You know it's one, a test to see what you will do with your own pain, and two, a framing move designed to define your sensitivity as a problem. So the moment you hear it, you do something different. You don't rush. You let it land. You notice the feelings. You pause long enough to remember. Insults are tests. If I react like before, I give them the answer they want. Instead of laughing at yourself, you might say slowly, "Sharing my feelings isn't being dramatic. It's being honest." If that bothers you, say that directly. No shouting, no long speech. Just a sentence that refuses to accept their frame. In that moment, you've done three things at once. You've protected your reality. You've refused the role of the dramatic one, and you've sent the test back to them. Can they handle you being honest without making you feel crazy? That is the quiet science of control being interrupted. You begin to understand, on a deeper level, the first numbered idea, the psychology of insults. You realize that an insult pulls two triggers at once inside you. First, it hits your emotional wound. Second, it tempts your ego to fix it. If someone says, "You're clingy," the wound is the fear that you're not lovable unless you're independent. The ego wants to prove, "I'm not clingy. I'm special. I'm different. I'm worth staying for." So you cling harder. You call more. You try to act chill while actually burning inside. When you see this, you can talk to both parts of yourself instead of rushing to obey them. You can say to the hurt part, "Yes, that hurt. It makes sense that it hurts." You want to be seen as enough. And to the ego, you can say, "We don't have to prove anything to someone who chooses insults over understanding." Just that inner conversation already reduces how much power the insult has. It's no longer a command. It's just a stimulus. Now imagine a different situation. You're at work. You suggest an idea in a meeting. Someone across the table, maybe your boss, maybe a coworker, smirks and says, "That's cute, but we need serious ideas." People chuckle. You feel your face heat up. That's not just rudeness. It's a subtle power move. They used framing control to define your idea as childish, and there's as serious before any real discussion. The old you might shrink back, tell yourself you're stupid, decide not to speak up again. Or maybe you'd push back and say something defensive, which they could then frame as you being overly emotional at work. Either way, they win the frame. You're either silent and small, or emotional and difficult. But now, you know something different. You know that whoever defines the frame defines the story. So you stay calm and say, "I'm serious about this. Let me explain the reasoning behind it." If you disagree, that's okay, but dismissing it as cute doesn't move us forward. You haven't insulted them back. You haven't raised your voice. But you've broken the frame that they tried to place around you. They are forced to either discuss the actual idea or expose that they are more invested in dominance than in solutions. Real control hates being brought into the light. Framing control only works if you silently agree. When you quietly disagree with clarity, the control leaks away. You begin to see just how much of your life has been shaped by frames. You're too sensitive. You're the difficult one. You always do this. You don't understand how things work. These phrases lock you into roles. You spend your energy either trying to escape the role or playing it. Now you are learning to say, "No, I reject that casting. I can be sensitive and still be right. I can be emotional and still be valid. I can disagree and still be reasonable." And with that, you run into the third idea again. Reacting disempowers you. You think about how many times someone's tone, someone's message, someone's silence has changed your entire mood. You think about the times you've thrown your phone, deleted and rewrote long texts, cried in the bathroom, walked around in circles rehearsing conversations, while they, on the other end, maybe just went about their day, barely moved by the storm they started in you. It's painful to admit, but important. You have given people the ability to change the weather inside you just by moving their face or their fingers. That is what makes a small insult or a small silence such an effective tool of control. They don't have to do much. They just have to trigger your automatic script. So you decide, as an experiment, to change one thing: the timing. The next time someone triggers you, you don't promise yourself that you'll never feel anything again. You just promise yourself this: I will not respond in the first 5 minutes. That's all. 5 minutes of silent power. You read the message that says, "You're overreacting, like always." You feel your heart jump, your breath shorten, your fingers itch to type. Instead, you put down the phone. You walk to the kitchen. You drink water. You walk around. Maybe you even shake your hands. Let your body discharge some of the adrenaline. You remind yourself, the message exists. It's not going anywhere. I have time. My worth is not hanging on an instant reply. Those 5 minutes may feel like hours. Your mind will scream, "Answer now, or you'll lose them. Explain yourself, or they'll think you're wrong. Fix this now." This is your conditioning talking. This is all the past times where fast reaction felt like survival. But you know that silent power is a muscle, and the only way to make it stronger is to use it when it feels impossible. When you finally respond, you are different. You're still hurt, but you're not drowning. You might reply, "I'm not overreacting. I'm expressing how this affects me. If you're not willing to listen, I'll step back from this conversation." That kind of sentence almost never appears if you respond in the first 5 seconds. It appears when you give your wiser self time to take the wheel. And here, self-awareness as immunity becomes real. Because you realize something crucial. If you don't know your own patterns, someone else can run them for you. If you don't know that you panic when someone is disappointed in you, they can use disappointment and silence like a leash. If you don't know that you hate conflict so much, you'll accept almost any blame to avoid it. They can push all responsibility onto you and watch you accept it. So you start mapping yourself like a scientist. You observe without judgment. When someone raises their voice, I freeze and agree to anything. When someone threatens to leave, I beg and bargain. When someone praises me, I overlook red flags. When someone uses big words confidently, I doubt my own memory or thoughts. These are not reasons to hate yourself. They are reasons to be gentle and to be careful. You begin to talk to yourself in the very moments you used to disappear. When someone says, "If you really loved me, you'd do this for me," you feel the familiar guilt rise. But now you can say inside, "This is that old guilt hook. My need to be good is being used on me." Loving someone doesn't mean I have to say yes to everything. When someone says, "Nobody else would want you," you feel the old fear of abandonment. But your new self-awareness steps in and says, "That sentence is designed to make me feel trapped. It only works if I believe it." This inner commentary doesn't magically remove the pain, but it stops the pain from automatically turning into obedience. That's the difference between being controlled and being influenced. You can't stop every jab, but you can decide which ones move you. As you do this, you start to learn from insults instead of living inside them. You start seeing each cutting comment as a piece of data. Data about their view of you. Data about your triggers. Data about the dynamic itself. Someone says, "You always make everything about you," when you bring up how their behavior hurts you. That tells you two things. First, they are uncomfortable when the focus isn't on their needs. Second, you may have a pattern of picking relationships where your needs are treated as intrusions. Instead of collapsing into, "I'm selfish," you can ask, "Why do I keep staying where it's unacceptable for me to have feelings?" Another person says, "You're not strong enough to be on your own." It hurts. But you examine it. Are there areas where you depend on them more than is healthy? Maybe yes. But that doesn't mean you can't grow. In fact, their insult becomes fuel. If you truly believe I can't stand alone, then one of the kindest things I can do for myself is prove you wrong, not by arguing with you, but by building a life where I actually can stand alone. The insult soaks less deeply when it is turned into information. It doesn't mean you pretend it doesn't hurt. It means you decide that its final meaning will not be that you are small. Its final meaning will be that you are learning. As you grow into this mindset, your way of speaking starts to shift. You find yourself using gentle responses more naturally, not as a script, but as an extension of your clarity. Your partner says, "You're crazy. No one else would stick around for you." You hear the old hook: insult, fear, control. Instead of crying and begging, you say, "If you really believe that, then staying with you is not safe for me." You're not screaming. You're not insulting them back. You're just making the logic visible. They may double down. They may say, "See, you're overreacting right now." But inside, you know, that's another frame, another test. And you don't have to pass it to keep your dignity. A family member says, "You've changed. You used to be so sweet and easy." You know what they really mean. You used to say yes to everything. The old you would feel guilty. The new you smiles softly and says, "I'm still sweet. I'm just not easy to manipulate anymore." That sentence might shake them, but it will also anchor you. A friend says, "You're too sensitive." "It's just how I talk." You quietly reply, "And this is how I feel." If how you talk regularly hurts me, either you adjust or I step back. Both of us have a choice. Gentle, calm. You're not trying to win. You're trying to live in truth. And underneath all of this, lasting calm is growing like a slow, strong tree. You start to notice that your baseline is different. You still get activated. You still have days where you spiral. But you also have moments where someone's disapproval doesn't shake you as much as it used to. Where someone's silence leaves you wondering, but not collapsing. Where someone's insult stings, but doesn't erase a week of self-worth. You notice that you can now go a whole morning without checking your phone obsessively. You notice that you can sit with an unresolved conversation without inventing 100 worst-case stories. You notice that you have things you care about, projects, hobbies, friends, quiet joys, that don't all vanish the second one person is upset with you. This is what real agency feels like as it returns. Not like a dramatic transformation where you never doubt yourself again, but like a series of small, steady shifts. You start to believe that you are not at the mercy of every cue, every expression, every sigh around you. You respect your sensitivity, but you no longer let others weaponize it so easily. And as this calm grows, you start to see the people in your life more clearly. Some of them, when they realize their old methods don't work as well, will adjust in a healthy way. They will say, "I'm sorry I said that. It was unfair." They will ask, "How can I bring things up without hurting you?" They will show that they value connection more than control. Those are people you can often work with, if their actions match their words over time. Others, when they realize you no longer react on command, will feel threatened. They will intensify their tests. More insults, more guilt trips, more silent treatments. They may call you cold, selfish, full of yourself. They will try to frame your growth as a problem. This is where the ultimate shift in power becomes not just internal, but external. Because you will slowly accept something you once resisted, you may need to walk away from some people to fully reclaim your agency. That isn't failure. That isn't overreaction. That is recognizing that some systems only function if you stay small. And you are not small anymore. So now, as you sit with all of this, imagine one person in your life where this pattern is strongest. Maybe it's someone from your past. Maybe it's someone in your present. Think about their typical insult, their usual frame, a reaction they always seem to pull from you. Picture the next time it happens, not in a fantasy where you destroy them in a speech, but in a simple, quiet moment. This time, you pause. This time, you hear the insult, and you say inside, "Test." You hear the frame, and you say, "Story." You feel your body react, and you say, "Old pattern." You breathe. You let the wave pass a little. Then you choose one small different act, a shorter reply, a clearer boundary, a gentle response, or no response at all. It may not feel powerful. It may feel shaky and strange. But in that small moment, the quiet science of control has just lost a tiny bit of its hold on you. And that is how this really works, not with one big dramatic victory, but with hundreds of small, invisible wins that, over time, add up to a life you actually recognize as your own. For now, remember this very simple, very radical sentence. I still feel every small cue, but I no longer belong to it. You start to notice something strange once you've seen how quiet control works a few times. It's everywhere. Not just in one relationship, not just in one argument, but in many places at once. The same patterns show up in love, in family, at work, and even in the way you talk to yourself. It's like discovering a secret language and then realizing it's written on every wall you've ever leaned against. Let's start with the place where it usually hurts the most. Love. Imagine you're with someone you're deeply attracted to. From the beginning, the connection felt electric. They looked at you as if you were the only person in the room. They told you things like, "I've never met anyone like you," or "You get me in a way no one else does." Your body relaxed into their attention. Your guard dropped. You started to imagine a future with them, even if you didn't say it out loud. Then, slowly, small comments began slipping through. Tiny insults, disguised as jokes or honesty. One night, you're getting ready to go out, and they say, "You look good." For you. You laugh, but it stings. Another time, you share something vulnerable, and they respond with, "You really overthink everything. It's kind of exhausting." After a few drinks, they tell a story in front of friends and add, "You know how dramatic they are," and everyone laughs. You feel your face heat, but you don't want to ruin the mood, so you stay quiet, Each of those moments is more than just a comment. That's the psychology of insults in romantic form. Every small cut is a test. Will you shrink, chase, or push back? And more importantly, will you stay? If you stay after the insult, if you keep giving them your heart, time, and body without naming the pain, they learn something. You will trade self-respect for closeness. You will accept being made small as long as they don't leave. That knowledge gives them a quiet power over you, even if they don't plan it consciously. The next layer is framing control. They start shaping who you are allowed to be in the relationship. Maybe they constantly call you jealous when you ask fair questions. They roll their eyes and say, "You're obsessed with me," when you try to clarify mixed signals. They tell you, "You're too sensitive," when you say a joke went too far. Over time, these labels become like a tight outfit you can't take off. You begin to move inside those labels. You hesitate before speaking because you don't want to sound crazy. You doubt your feelings because you don't want to be dramatic. You swallow your instincts because you don't want to be clingy. Their frame becomes your prison. This is how control can feel like love. You bend yourself to fit the version of you they've created. And every time you react fast, crying, yelling, pleading, over-explaining, you give them more evidence that their frame is true. That's reacting disempowering you in the most intimate space of your life. The more they can make you react, the more they can tell themselves and others, "See, this is who you are." Now imagine doing something different in that moment. You're out with them and their friends, and they make a joke at your expense. You know how needy they are. "They can't go a day without me." Everyone laughs. You feel the hot rush of shame and anger rising. The old you would either laugh along, make fun of yourself to keep things light, or snap and start a scene that later gets used against you. The new you calls on silent power. You let a small silence fall instead of forcing a laugh. You meet their eyes and say, calmly, "That doesn't feel like a joke to me." Just that. No long lecture. No drama. Just truth. The table feels the tension. They feel it too. For the first time, the pattern is not smooth. Somewhere inside, your nervous system shakes, but another part of you stands taller. You've interrupted the science of control with something unexpected: respect for yourself. Later, when you're alone, they might tell you, "You embarrassed me in front of everyone." You're overreacting. That's another test. Another frame. The old script would pull you into a long explanation, desperate to prove you weren't wrong. The new script remembers self-awareness as immunity. You know that being told you're overreacting is one of your triggers because it echoes older moments where your feelings were dismissed. You breathe and respond with a gentle response. "I wasn't trying to embarrass you. I was being honest. I don't like being called needy as a joke. I'm allowed to say that. If that embarrasses you, we need to talk about why." Your voice might still shake. You might still cry later. But you've done something important. You've refused to return to the small version of yourself that control requires. Now look at family. Family is often where the deepest frames are built. Maybe you grew up hearing things like, "Don't be selfish, think of the family," or "You're the difficult one," or "You always cause problems." These are not just old memories. They're the soil where present control grows. You call your parent and say you're too tired to visit this weekend. They respond, "After everything I've done for you, you can't even come see me?" You've changed. There's the insult hidden in guilt. You're ungrateful, cold, a bad child. You feel the familiar wave of shame. You start planning how to rearrange your entire week just to make that visit happen. That is the psychology of insults and framing control working together. You're ungrateful is the insult. The frame is, your time doesn't belong to you. Saying no is selfish. If you react with panic, apologizing, promising extra visits, you reinforce the frame. But now you can pause and use self-awareness. You ask yourself, is it true that saying no once makes me ungrateful? Or is this about their fear of being unimportant? You remember all the times you've dropped everything to be there. You realize that your worth as a child does not depend on constant sacrifice. So you use a gentle response. I love you, and I appreciate what you've done for me. I'm still not coming this weekend. I'm tired and need rest. That doesn't mean I don't care. They might insist. They might add more guilt. But each time you repeat your boundary calmly, you are planting new roots for lasting calm inside yourself. Now, the workplace. At work, the quiet science of control often hides behind professionalism. A boss says, you should be grateful to have this job. There are plenty of people who would kill for your position. On the surface, it sounds like a fact. Underneath, it's a threat. Don't ask for more. Don't complain. Don't question. If you react with fear, your behavior shifts. You stop bringing up unfair workloads. You stop asking for a raise you deserve. You stop pushing back when you're treated disrespectfully. You become easy to control, not because you're weak, but because they've successfully used scarcity to shape your choices. Now, imagine hearing that same sentence through your new lens. You hear, be grateful, and you translate it inside. They are reminding me they have power over my income. They are trying to use fear to keep things as they are. You don't explode. You don't quit on the spot, but you quietly start making a plan. You update your CV. You explore other options. You talk to someone about your rights. And next time you speak to that boss, you hold yourself differently. When they say, we need you to work late again, no complaints, you might say, I've stayed late many times. I'd like to talk about compensation or workload, so this doesn't become the constant norm. Calm, direct, not begging, not attacking. If they refuse, you now have information. Learning from insults and control attempts means you treat them as data points. This place survives on people being afraid. That doesn't mean you can leave immediately, but it means you stop telling yourself you're lucky to be mistreated. That quiet shift in perception is a reclaiming of power. Now, friends and social circles. Maybe you have a friend group where teasing is the main language. A little roast here, a little mockery there. But somehow, you notice that you are the one who gets the harshest lines. They say, oh, we joke, because we love you. But the jokes always seem to hit your real insecurities. Your weight, your intelligence, your relationship status, your money. One day, someone says, you're always the mess of the group, but we'd be bored without you. Everyone laughs. You smile, but something burns inside. You go home thinking, am I really the mess? That line has now become a frame. You start seeing yourself through it. This is where you apply everything again. The insult is the mess part. The frame is that your value is your dysfunction. Your reaction used to be laughter or extra effort to be entertaining. This time, you decide to use silent power. You don't laugh as loudly. You let the silence after that comment be a bit longer. Later, alone with one of them, you say, when you call me the mess of the group, it actually hurts. It makes me feel like I'm only valued when I'm struggling. I don't want to play that role anymore. If they say, you're too sensitive, you know that line by now. If they care, they will adjust. If they don't, they will show you they prefer the version of you they can laugh at. That knowledge hurts, but it also frees. Now we come to the most important place this all shows up. Inside your own head, other people's control fades when you are not actively with them. But if their words live inside you, they continue the work without them being there. That's when you become your own controller without realizing it. Think about the things you say to yourself when you make a mistake. Do you echo someone else's voice? You're so stupid. You'll always ruin everything. No one will ever want you like this. Think about what you tell yourself when someone pulls away. Of course they left. You're too much. You should have been quieter. You chased them away. These are not fresh thoughts. They are recordings. Your nervous system learned from every insult and every frame. It stored those lines. Now, even when no one is saying them to you, your own mind repeats them. That is dark psychology turned inward. Your inner critic uses the same tools others used to control you. So now, you apply the same ideas inside the psychology of insults. When your mind says, "You're worthless," you treat it like an insult from someone else. You don't immediately believe it. You ask, who first spoke to me like this? Whose words am I replaying? You see it as a pattern, not a prophecy. Framing control. When your inner voice says, "You're always the problem," you recognize that as a frame, a story. You ask, is that really true? Or is this the only role I was allowed to play growing up? You begin to offer yourself new frames. I make mistakes, and I also learn. I trigger, and I also heal. I am not just one thing. Reacting disempowers you, even with your inner critic. If you hear, "You're a failure," and immediately spiral, your day is steered by that thought. Silent power here means pausing instead of instantly agreeing. You can say, "I'm having a harsh thought about myself right now. It feels real, but I'm going to wait before I decide it's true." Silent power with yourself might look like taking 3 breaths before letting a thought become your truth. It might look like journaling the thought instead of living inside it. It might look like telling yourself, "We will not decide who we are in the middle of this emotional wave. We'll revisit this when we are calmer." Self-awareness as immunity becomes, I know that when I feel ashamed, my inner critic gets louder. I know that when someone disapproves of me, I pile on myself. I know my mental habits. With that awareness, you can catch yourself mid-attack and say, "Oh, I see you. Old script. You're trying to protect me by criticizing me first." But we don't need that protection in the same way anymore. Learning from insults inside might mean asking, is there something useful here? If the thought is, you procrastinate. Too much, maybe the useful part is, I avoid tasks when I'm afraid of failing. You take that as information and work with it gently, instead of letting "you're lazy" be the last word. Gentle responses inside sound like, "That was a mistake, but it doesn't erase my worth," or "I didn't handle that well, but I'm learning," or "I feel rejected, but that doesn't mean I am unlovable." You talk to yourself the way you wish someone had talked to you when you were young. Firm, honest, and kind. Lasting calm and the ultimate shift in power become this. Even when your mind throws the worst possible sentences at you, there is another voice that doesn't disappear. A voice that says, "You are more than this moment. You are more than this criticism. You are not a machine to be controlled by insults, not even your own." The more you practice this inside, the less outer control can stick. Because if someone throws an insult at you that doesn't match how you've learned to talk to yourself, it feels wrong. It doesn't find a hook. It lands, it stings, and then it slides off. Your inner world becomes less available for occupation. That this is the real meaning of keeping your agency. It's not about being untouchable or never influenced. You will always feel things when others push or pull you. You will always care about people's opinions to some degree. You will always feel twinges of doubt, fear, and shame. That's being human. Agency means that those feelings no longer write your entire story. Insults can't decide your identity. Framing can't lock you into roles forever. Silence can't automatically turn into self-blame. Your reactions are no longer automatic. They are increasingly chosen. as you move into the final part of this journey. Remember this. You are not trying to become a cold, unmovable stone. You are learning to be a person with a soft heart and a strong spine. Someone who feels deeply, but is not easily steered. Someone who hears all the quiet cues of control around them and still chooses calmly and clearly how to move. You once lived in a world where every raised eyebrow, every joke, every sigh, every silence could push you off your center. You are now building a world inside you where you can notice each of those cues and still say, I see you, I feel you. But I decide. There is a moment in every journey of waking up where you realize something both painful and liberating. Nobody is coming to rescue you from the patterns that control you. People might help you, teach you, love you, support you, but the actual act of stepping out of invisible control is yours. And that's not as heavy as it sounds. It's actually the most empowering truth you can hold, because it means this. You are not doomed to repeat the same story forever. You are not stuck being the person who is always controlled, always reacting, always apologizing for existing. You can become someone else. Someone who still feels everything, but moves differently. By now, you've seen how deep this goes. You've watched the psychology of insults at work, how small, cutting words from important people become tests of your loyalty and flexibility. You've seen framing control, how those same people define you as too much, not enough, or the problem, and how easily you slip into those roles when you're not paying attention. You've seen how instant reactions, crying, yelling, over-explaining, chasing, feed their power. You've experimented with silent power, pausing, breathing, letting the wave pass before you speak. You've used self-awareness like a shield, recognizing old wounds when they light up. You've learned to treat insults as data instead of destiny, responded more gently but firmly, and started building a lasting calm inside you that no one else fully controls. Now we bring all of that together into something you can carry, something you can live. Start with this simple but profound realization. Control thrives in confusion. The more confused you are, the easier you are to steer. Confusion about who you are. Confusion about what you deserve. Confusion about what actually happened in an argument. Confusion about whether your feelings are valid. People who use dark psychology, intentionally or not, don't always need to convince you they're right. They just need to convince you that you can't trust yourself. Once that happens, you will reach for their version of reality every time. So the first quiet promise you make to yourself is this. You will always come back to your own perception, even if you don't fully trust it yet. You will always ask, how did that actually feel to me? Before you decide what to do. Others can give their opinions, their side, their story, but you will not erase your own. You will remember how insults work, and you will stop calling them truth. When someone says, "You're too sensitive," you won't automatically shrink. You'll ask, too sensitive compared to what? Or too sensitive for your convenience? When someone says, "You're impossible," you'll quietly answer inside, impossible for you to control, maybe. When your own mind throws, "You're worthless," at you, you'll treat it as a hostile voice, not a holy one. You'll say, "No, that's not a fact. That's a wound speaking." You will look at framing control like a stage director you no longer work for. There will still be people who try to hand you scripts. You're the crazy one. You're the selfish one. You're the weak one. You will feel the pull to act out those lines, especially when you're tired or scared. But now you know that whoever names the roles tries to own the entire play. So you pause and ask, who benefits from me believing this about myself? If the answer is, someone who gets away with hurting me easier, you will decline the role. You might respond out loud with something as simple as, "I don't see myself that way," or "We obviously have different stories about what happened." You don't have to prove your version is right in that moment. You just have to refuse to sign your name under theirs. You will respect your reactions, but you will no longer hand them the keys. Your anger, your sadness, your fear, your shame, they are all signals, not masters. In the past, a sharp insult would send you straight into a spiral. A cold silence would send you into panic. Now, you will still feel the spike, but you won't automatically explode or collapse. You'll use your silent power like a brake. You can press gently. You see the message that hurts. You feel the flood rising. You tell yourself, yes, this hurts. Yes, I want to fix it now. But I will not let my first impulse speak for my whole self. You take a walk. You step away from the screen. You let your heart rate slow, even just a little. And then, when you do respond, your words come from a place that remembers your worth. You'll practice this over and over, not because you're weak, but because you're retraining a whole nervous system that thought survival meant instant reaction. Every time you pause, even for a few seconds, you are carving a new path in your mind. I don't have to dance the moment someone plays music. That is control moving back into your hands. You will keep turning your self-awareness into immunity instead of ammunition. It's easy, when you see your own patterns, to use them against yourself. I know I get triggered, so maybe I'm always wrong. No, self-awareness is not a weapon to beat yourself down. It's a map. It shows you where you are vulnerable, so you can protect yourself better. You'll know, for example, that abandonment is your deepest fear. So when someone threatens to leave every time you set a boundary, you'll tell yourself, this is my worst fear being used on me. That doesn't make their threat wise or justified. You'll know that criticism cuts you deeply because you grew up swimming in it. So when you hear, you're never good enough in any form, you will recognize it as a repeat of an old script, not a fresh revelation. You'll let this awareness soften you, not harden you. When you feel triggered, instead of snapping, I shouldn't be like this, you'll say, given what I've lived through, of course this hurts. But I don't have to surrender to it. I don't have to obey it. You will slowly master the art of learning from insults without building your identity from them. Some comments will still sting. You won't pretend they don't. If someone says, you're closed off, you might check, am I holding back out of fear? If someone says, you never listen, you might ask, do I interrupt when I'm defensive? If you find truth, you'll use it to grow, not to please them, but to become more aligned with who you want to be. But when an insult's only purpose is to lower you, you'll see that too. You'd be nothing without me. No one else would want you. You're a burden. These are not feedback. They're chains made of someone else's insecurity and cruelty. You'll feel them thrown at you, and instead of wrapping them around your neck, you'll let them fall. You'll tell yourself, if someone talks to me this way, it says more about their character than about my value. Your words will change too. Gentle responses will become your quiet superpower. You won't need to shout to make your point. You won't need to crush the other person to preserve your integrity. You'll use sentences that are both soft and unshakable. I'm not okay with that. Don't speak to me like that again. If this is how you see me, maybe we shouldn't be close. I hear your perspective. I don't agree with it. I'm not going to argue about my worth. These are the sentences that close invisible doors without slamming them. They don't escalate. They clarify. They don't try to rewrite the other person. They define you. People who love control will hate them because gentle clarity leaves them with fewer angles to twist. People who love you will eventually respect them, even if it stings in the moment, as you keep doing this. Your inner and outer calm will no longer be temporary visitors. They'll become something like a home. Calm won't mean nothing bothers you. It will mean that when something does bother you, you don't disappear into it. You will still have days when anxiety hums under your skin. You will still have moments when a small comment digs deeper than it should. You will still catch yourself rehearsing arguments in your head, replaying scenes, imagining perfect comebacks. But you will also have the ability to step back and say, wait, my whole life is not this situation. There are other parts of me, other parts of my day, other parts of my future that deserve my focus. You will put your phone down and work on something meaningful. You will choose to go for a walk instead of rereading that message 10 more times. You will call a friend who sees you clearly instead of staying alone with someone else's frame echoing in your mind. You will go to sleep without solving every argument in advance. Each time you do, you strengthen the part of you that believes, my mind is mine. My time is mine. My energy is mine. And little by little, you will notice a strange, beautiful shift. The people who once terrified you emotionally will begin to lose their power. The words that once paralyzed you will still hurt, but they will not own your entire day. The tests you once felt compelled to pass, laughing at your own pain, apologizing for other people's mistakes, proving your loyalty by abandoning yourself, you will stop taking those tests. You will stop walking into those invisible exams. You will see how some people, when their ability to control you fades, also fade from your life. They might leave noisily, calling you selfish or changed. They might leave quietly, finding someone else who is easier to push around. Either way, their departure will feel bitter and clean at the same time. You will grieve the dream you had with them. You will grieve the version of you who needed them. But you will also feel a new space open up, a space where you are no longer constantly bent into shapes that hurt you. In that space, you will meet yourself. Not the self other people told you that you are. Not the self defined by insults and labels. Not the self who exists mainly as a reaction to others. You will meet the you who exists even when no one is watching or judging. The you who has tastes, opinions, desires, values, independent of who approves or disapproves. You'll realize there are parts of you that you silenced because they weren't useful in systems of control. Your curiosity, your creativity, your anger, your standards, your ability to say no without apology. Dark psychology thrives when you believe these parts are dangerous or inconvenient. Your new life begins when you recognize them as precious. You will give yourself permission to be whole. That means you will sometimes disappoint people who benefited from your half version. You will sometimes hear, "You're selfish now," when you're simply balanced. You will sometimes hear, "You're difficult now," when you're simply honest. That's okay. Their descriptions are framed by what they lose when you stop being easy to control. You will remind yourself, over and over, that your job is not to be endlessly controllable. Your job is to be responsible for your impact, aligned with your values and true to your own perception. Some people will find that magnetic. Some will find it unbearable. Both reactions are information. In time, the quiet science of control will stop feeling like something mysterious outside you and start feeling like something you can read clearly. You'll walk through the world noticing the cues. That joke is actually an insult. That compliment has a hook in it. That silence is a punishment, not a thoughtful pause. That guilt trip is about their fear, not my failure. You'll see it without having to obsess over it. You'll name it without having to collapse under it. And here is the most important part. You won't use this knowledge to become a puppet master yourself. You could. Once you understand how insults test devotion, how frames shape identity, how silence creates anxiety, how praise can be a leash, you could flip the game. You could become the one who keeps people guessing, the one who makes small cuts wrapped in humor, the one who withholds approval to keep everyone trying. Many do. That is one path, but you know where that path leads. It leads to relationships built on fear, not respect. It leads to constant performance from others and constant emptiness inside you. It leads to a life where no one is truly close to you, because everyone is busy trying to please you. That is not power. That is dependence wearing a crown. The other path is harder and cleaner. You use what you've learned not to dominate, but to discern. Not to trap, but to choose. You become someone who can't be easily controlled, and also someone who refuses to control others in those same dark ways. You stop using insults as tests. If you have a problem with someone, you name the behavior instead of attacking their worth. You stop calling people too sensitive when what you mean is, I don't want to deal with your feelings. You stop using guilt and fear to get your way. You stop calling silent punishment space. You learn to set boundaries without emotional blackmail. In doing so, you become rare. Because you're not just immune to quiet control, you've stepped outside of the entire system. You choose a different currency for your relationships. Honesty, mutual respect, clear communication, and consent. That doesn't mean everything is perfect. It means you are building your life on something other than who can control who. This is the strong summary at the center of everything you've heard. First, insults are not random. They are tests. Some people use them to measure how much pain you will tolerate to stay close. When you see them as tests, you stop seeing them as proof of your worth. You start making decisions based on how someone treats you, not just how you feel about them. Second, framing is not harmless. The words people use to define you become the stage you stand on. When you accept harmful frames, you act them out. When you reject them, you begin to see new options. Third, reacting is not always power. The faster and bigger your reaction, the more information you give away. Pausing is not weakness. It is a reclaiming of choice. Fourth, silence is not always a weapon. When you choose it consciously, silence becomes a shelter where you hear your own thoughts again. 5 seconds of breath can be the difference between repeating an old pattern and writing a new line. Fifth, self-awareness is not self-attack. It is your manual for navigating your own mind. When you know your wounds, you also know when they are being pressed, and you can respond with care instead of automatic obedience. Sixth, insults can be used as lessons or as cages. You decide which. You can take any useful truth they contain and leave the rest behind. You are not required to live by every ugly sentence anyone has ever said to you. Seventh, gentle responses are not soft resignation. They are boundaries without poison. I don't accept that. I don't agree. I won't stay under those conditions. These are quiet lines that mark your edges. Eighth, lasting calm is not the end of feeling. It is the beginning of real power. Your agency returns when you can feel deeply and still choose your actions. When your nervous system is not owned by every sigh, insult, or silence around you. If all you take from this entire journey is one guiding belief, let it be this: you are allowed to care. You are allowed to love. You are allowed to be sensitive, emotional, intense, and thoughtful. But none of that means you must give up control over your own life. You can be kind and still say no. You can be loving and still walk away. You can be open-hearted and still be impossible to quietly control. If this spoke to something inside you, honor that feeling. Don't let it fade the moment the audio ends. Protect it. Feed it. Use it. Like this video so that it can reach others who live in silent control without having words for it. Share it with someone you know has been made small by jokes, frames, and tests. And in the comments, write a single sentence that marks your choice. I feel everything, but I decide. And if you want to keep going deeper into dark psychology, not to become darker, but to see clearly and live freely, subscribe to Audiobook Vision. Here, you learn to recognize the quiet science of control so that your life is no longer written by anyone else's invisible hand, but by your own, awake and steady.